Chinese and Russian militaries shared a potential weakness, a new US report finds. Seoul, South Korea CNN. China's military leaders share a potential weakness that has undermined their Russian counterpart in Ukraine and could hamper their ability to wage the similar war, according to a new report from the US National Defense University. The report identifies the lack of cross training as a possible Achilles heel within the People's Revolution Army, but analysts remain wary of underestimating China's capabilities and warn against the comparisons with Russia. The report, the report delved in, into the backgrounds of more than 300 of the PLA's top officers across the five services: Army, Navy, Air Force, Rocket Force, and the Strategic Support Force. In the 6 years leading up to 2021, it found that in which service leaders are unlikely to have operational experience in any branch other than the one they began their careers in. In other words, PLA soldiers stay soldiers, sailors stay sailors, our airmen stay airmen. Rarely do they venture outside those silos, the report say, noting a sharp contrast to the US military, where cross training has been a legal requirement since 1986. The 73-page report went on to say that this rigidity, rigidity could reduce China's effectiveness in future conflict, particularly in conflict requiring high levels of joint service action, and suggests PLA forces would become bogged down by the same sort of problems that have be, bedeviled their Russian counterpart in Ukraine, where the overall cohesion of forces was low. Chinese army and naval units conduct a live fire drill in Jiangsu City, China on August 24, 2022. Since the beginning of Russia's invasion of each neighbor 7 months ago, deficiencies in the Russian military structure have become plain to outside observers. In the recent rout of Russian forces by the Ukrainian counteroffensive, Moscow's ground forces lacked air cover, analysts say, while earlier in the war, logistical problems played hey-hook with Russia's ability to resupply its forces. Its tanks lacked suitable tires for the terrain and kept breaking down from the lack of maintenance. According to the report's author, Joel Uthnau, the PLA's senior leaders could face similar problems due to their lack of cross training. Operational commanders, for instance, rarely have a career broadening experience in the logistics, and vice versa, said the report by Uthnau, a senior research fellow at the university's Center for the Study of Chinese Military Affairs. Operational commanders who never needed to gain a high level of understanding of logistics or maintenance might fail to use those forces optimally, paralleling another Russian failure in 2022. A brigade of the PLA Army under the Eastern Theater Command, together with the Department of the Navy, Air Force, and the Navy Aviation, organized a red and blue combat drill for troops in Jiangsu, China on September 2nd, 2022. In a comparison of four-star rank commanders in 2021, such as the chairman of the Joint Chief or the head of Indo-Pacific Command in the United States, or leaders of the Central Military Commission or theater, commands in China, all of the 40 US officers had joint service experience compared to 77% of their 31 Chinese equivalent, the report found. It also noted another key differences. In the US, almost all of the four-star commanders had operational experience. In China, almost half were professional political commissars. Don't, under, don't underestimate the PLA. Carl Schuster, a former director of operations at the U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center in Hawaii, said the new report is the best assessment of where China is at and going down I have seen. But he cautioned against using it as a predictor of how the PLA might fare in the Ukraine-like war, as it had numerous other advantages over the Russian military. China gives the better training to new recruits and no longer relies on the conscript, he said, whereas the Russian army relies on the 7-month conscript for 80 to 85% of each enlisted personnel. And unlike Russia, China has a professional, non-commissioned officer corps, he added. Schuster, who now teaches at Hawaii Pacific University, estimates that China is about 4 or 5 years behind the US in terms of joint operation abilities, but warned the recent exercises suggest they are catching up. He cited the recent Chinese operations like those around Taiwan after US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Iceland in early August as demonstrating this. The study's unstated implication that the PLA might be unable to do effective joint ops is misplaced, Schuster said. The report with Whitnall, who is also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University in Washington, also found demographic differences between Chinese and the US leaders. Senior Chinese officers were homogeneous in terms of age, education, gender, and ethnicity, the report said. Among the four-star ranks, Chinese officers were on average than their American counterparts. 64 versus 60, and had more years in the military. 46 versus 40. US leader was US leadership was also more diverse, with 2 women and 3 African Americans, compared to a homogeneous PLA leadership entirely male and 99% Han Chinese, the report said. And one final stark difference is 58% of the US officers had served the foreign country, while none of the Chinese officers had overseas experience. The newly recruited civil servants undergo military training at the Xizhou District People's Court in Zhuang, China on August 3rd, 2022. The Xi's factor. The report also noted how Chinese leader Xi Jinping has tightened his grip on the PLA's leadership since taking control of the Chinese Communist Party in 2013. Though through his role as chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xi has been personally involved in the selection of senior officers, he said. All PLA officers are members of the Chinese Communist Party and must have enough political acumen to demonstrate loyalty to Xi and his agenda, he said, noting that Xi rotates top officers geographically within China to prevent them from developing patronage network that might one day threaten his leadership. But it also noted that she has been careful to reward the loyalty and the patience in the senior officer corps. Xi Jinping has not skipped over a generation of people who had waited their turn to promote young Turks more familiar with the modern conflict, he said, as the older officers reach retirement ages for their grade, as old as 68 for those on the Central Military Commission. Their successors will bring more experience of the modern battlefield, including the newest technologies, the report said. But the silos reinforced by tradition and organizational culture are expected to remain, he said.